Hey there, this is Seth Schaefer from the Bots and Stuff Robotics Battlebots team, and today I want to talk about how Retrograde performed in the Battlebots Champions series. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get right into it. Make sure to stick around till the end of the episode, where I will be talking about whether we are going to be fighting in Season 7 of BattleBots with Retrograde. But before that, I'm going to talk about exactly how we ended up in the Champions series to begin with, and then talk through the fights and outcomes against Mammoth and against Glitch. Let me know in the comments below, did you think that Retrograde deserved to win the judge's decision against Glitch or not? Seems like there's a lot of debate online about this. I'll give you our take on it, or at least my personal take, and talk about how the judging works and how I think it probably broke down the scores. Let's rewind. Retrograde was a very ambitious build and a brand new robot for the 2021 series of BattleBots that was filmed for Season 6. All of these Champions fights, they keep referencing it as if it's Season 7, which is really confusing to us builders, but they were filmed concurrently with the Championship tournament from the regular season of Season 6. Now, Retrograde was built in just a few weeks leading up to the tournament. Our sponsors, generously presented on the back of Bloodsport's shirt here behind me, made it possible for us to get Retrograde together in time. But it was still a very rushed build, and with such a complex robot, it was really hard to get everything working for every single fight. There were 7 motors in Retrograde, 2 for the undercutter, 4 for the drive, and another 1 for the lifter, which I'll talk a lot more about later. There was also an additional flamethrower, though we couldn't quite get the weight that we needed to run it in any of our 3 tournament fights, so we just ran it in the 2 Champions fights. I was actually controlling the flamethrower for our fight against Mammoth and Glitch. Now, due to the complexity of Retrograde and the rushed build, we didn't get everything working at 100% capacity for every fight, like I said before. The main problem that we ran into consistently throughout the competition was with our lifter. The undercutter wasn't working in our fight against Defender simply because we forgot to plug in a couple wires the right way and they were mislabeled. That was a terrible mistake, and I talked about that in our recap against Huge, which you can see if you look back in our channel. But going into all of our fights, the lifter was like kind of sort of working. The reason for that was not an electrical issue, but this time a mechanical one. The gearbox that we spec'd out for the lifter was only just barely enough to lift up another robot, but the motor that we had powering it was gigantic, and it could easily completely destroy all of the gears inside of it. In multiple fights when we ran it, we had the sun gears split from the planetary gearbox carrier plates inside the gearbox, meaning that we would lose the ability to use the lifter after like a flip or a lift or anything, really. That's why we weren't really able to use it effectively against Defender or against Huge, not that we could have really touched much on Huge anyway. Now, to fix this going into the Champions series, we had to do a lot of work over just a couple days. The first thing that we decided to do was to get a bigger sprocket. I personally, as the machining specialist on the team, was responsible for getting a sprocket off McMaster and then modifying it on the Tormach on site to be able to get it to fit onto Retrograde's arm. This would make it so that we had about a 5-to-1 reduction instead of our previous 2-to-1 reduction between the gearbox and the arm, reducing the load on the gearbox by more than half. We were hoping this would get it to be more effective in battle without destroying our gearbox. We also current limited that giant lifter motor to make it so that we would be able to drive it, ideally without destroying it. The problem that we ran into, though, that we didn't really have time to deal with, was when we put the bot in the test box, seemed like the arm was moving just fine. But then, of course, when we put the bot into the arena against Mammoth, the arm was moving so slowly that Aaron decided to just stop using it because he felt it would be unusable in the heat of battle. We never figured out why this was happening. It must have something to do with the way that VESC implements their current limiting. And because we were limiting it from like a 200 amp speed controller's max limit down to like 20 amps just to make it so that we weren't destroying our gearbox, I think that it just didn't really handle being limited to just such a low percentage of what the motor's capable of. We're definitely going to have to revise that if we make Retrograde again in the future. So, we had just spent about 2 days making sure that our lifter would work as best as we could get it to work, and now we were hoping to enter the Champions series. There was a huge sign-up list on a whiteboard with all the bots who wanted to enter, and if you did the math based on the robots that were in the tournament and weren't able to compete, and the total number of bots left, there would be every single robot except for exactly 2 of them entered into Champions. We were one of those 2, so why were we in? Well, if you've now watched the whole Champions series, and if you haven't, I don't know why you're watching this video, huge spoilers ahead, you'll notice there are a couple robots that are in fact absent from the Champions brackets. One of those was a beloved little brown robot. Yep, that's right. Rusty was trying to compete in the Champions bracket, and they were supposed to be matched up against Mammoth. Now, Dave Eaton was working tirelessly throughout the entire filming series to try and get his new Rusty Jr., to function correctly, but it had a really complicated experimental system in it, and he was having issues with weight as well, and unfortunately he had to bow out the day of. We were told at about 3 o'clock that we were going to be subbed in for Rusty and had to fight Mammoth, after waiting the entire morning that far to hope that would happen. So we quickly got our robot ready and brought it into the arena to fight Mammoth. So the Mammoth fight, that one was a little closer for comfort than we would have liked, but I think that Retrograde was pretty dominant in that we had pretty matched even control and aggression, but we were the only one doing any damage. We disabled their primary weapon in the first 10 seconds of the fight, and we were starting to damage one of their wheels towards the end of it. Now, a lot of people are asking online, why the hell weren't you just going for their wheels? Well, obviously we were going for their wheels. We're not idiots. Aaron is a really good driver, and he was doing the best that he could. But Ricky Williams is a good driver too, and his robot is 8 feet frickin' wide with these plangers that are specifically designed to contain an undercutter like ours from getting to the wheels. We were able to bend one of his drive shafts towards the end, causing their drive to start smoking at the end of the fight. You might notice our drive started smoking at the end as well. That's because the only damage we received in the fight was in the first couple seconds when Mammoth's little flipper lifter was working. They managed to get a hit right up against one of our wheels in the back of the robot, and it actually dented in the race of one of our wheel bearings, causing a little bit of extra resistance for that wheel, overloading that motor and causing it to start smoking towards the end. But that wasn't enough damage to sway the fight in Mammoth's favor, and so the win was awarded to us.
That need to immediately happen. Forks have to come off, fork mounts and forks, so that we can flip the robot on its head and get to the bottom. Both back drive motors have to come out. We're going to start with the one that's worse. We're going to start with this side. This one's certainly broken. We have to replace it. If we want to do the lifter, which we do, we are going to, someone has to break the chain link and start taking the bolts out of the center tower. Once that's done, we can pull the center tower out, slide the arm off, new sprocket goes on, lifter arm goes back on, center tower goes back in. By that time, hopefully I'm done with the drive motors, and I think that should be everything unless we run into something in the bot that...
We have another motor that we can wire up right now.
So now we were matched up against Glitch. Now, like I said before, we were having lots of problems with the lifter, and Glitch has hella magnets sticking them to the floor, so it wasn't going to be as simple as just flip Glitch over and instantly win the fight, unfortunately. If our lifter was working the way that we had intended it to be, and they didn't have quite as much magnet downforce, maybe even with the magnet downforce, we probably could have managed to flip them over. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case, so we had to go full rotator and just tank every hit we possibly could against their chassis. Now, it turns out that Glitch is built a lot like Bloodsport. They have a single huge piece of aluminum making up the body of their robot, but unlike Bloodsport, they bolt a bunch of AR armor plates to the outside. So we managed to take off an armor panel that was only held on with 1 or 2 bolts, but other than that, the only damage we really significantly did to Glitch was bending their forks and destroying one of their rear mechanism wheels. Now, you might think, wow, you destroyed a wheel on Glitch? I never noticed that. Well, the judges probably didn't notice either, because as Kyle Miller himself has mentioned in his blog about the fight, Glitch's drive practically got better when we did that. So unfortunately, that didn't sway the fight in our favor. While you could definitely argue that Glitch deserved 0 or at best 1 control point, and it was kind of split on aggression, but I think that Retrograde deserved more aggression points. At the end of the day, Aaron made a driving error, and our rear wheels were completely annihilated by Glitch. And even though we have 2 more drive wheels hidden inside the robot, ultimately it looks like they scored it probably 1 to 2 control, 1 to 2 aggression, and 4-1 damage against us. And that was basically the end of the script there. I don't think that we could have really done anything better other than not getting our rear wheels destroyed. But honestly, even if we had managed to win that fight, it would have been really, really hard for us to rebuild our robot in time to fight Uppercut. And then, I mean, it's Uppercut. What were we going to do against Uppercut? We already lost a fight brutally against Huge. So there wasn't a lot of hope that we could have really done that much better. But I do wish that we would have gotten that win, at the very least, so that we could have one more win on our record that might have looked better to the selection committee going into Season 7. After glitch, we did lose a couple wheels, but the ones on the front worked perfectly the whole time. Buff out those scratches.
Look at the bearing.
Yeah, bearing is having a great day. The balls are free now. Alright, so what's the deal? Retrograde in Season 7. We have a whole new design. We've got every single possible improvement that you could possibly think of. The robot's new design looks amazing, and we were kind of sort of accepted, but ultimately, we're not going to be competing with Retrograde in Season 7. Battlebots offered us an alternate position, and there's no way that we feel comfortable asking our sponsors for $30,000 to build a brand new Battlebot with no promise of any airtime whatsoever. It just isn't right of us to ask that of them, and so we've decided to bow out of Season 7 with Retrograde and redouble our efforts, both Aaron, myself, and other members of the Retrograde team, all focusing on getting Bloodsport to be the absolute beast that we know it can be, and take Season 7 by storm. Bloodsport is being redesigned from the ground up almost. We have a brand new chassis I'll be showing off in a video that'll be posted to the Bloodsport channel in another week or two. And we've got a completely different way of driving our weapon this season that I think a lot of you will have some thoughts about when you get to finally see it. Don't worry, still an overhead spinner, still 4-wheel drive, and it's still going to kick some butt. So make sure to subscribe so that you can see all of our future build videos for Bloodsport and all of our testing videos when you get to finally destroy stuff leading up to the tournament. And, once again, thanks for watching. Oh, also check out our sponsors. They make this possible, like I said. End card. Look at them all. Check out their websites. I'll have some linked in the description. Bye!